FreeBSD reviews, tutorials and gaming.
We're off to a good start with this review of GhostBSD 19.04. As downloading the ISO from the ghostbsd.org website reached a dizzying 16 megabits per second. Right, we're just going to boot into the live session of GhostBSD to show you what the default desktop looks like. You'll get a small choice screen in a minute showing you which graphics driver you should use. In this instance, because we're using VirtualBox, we will select VirtualBox. If you go down to the VirtualBox, that will install the correct driver and also the VirtualBox editions. The VirtualBox guest editions, that is. Right, this is what your basic default desktop looks like on GhostBSD. Nothing seems to have much changed since the last version. The icons are slightly tweaked, but all in all it looks the same, which is not a bad thing because it gives you familiarity. Right, we go to the applications. If you right click on the desktop, you get the create folder, create launcher, create document, open in terminal, and the usual, change desktop background. If you go to the applications, you get accessories, character mapping, Grandpa, GVim, calculator, Planck, Pluma, all the usual ones that you've seen before. Good basic tool set, I think. For education, you get LibreOffice Math. Graphics, Eye of Mate, LibreOffice Draw, Make Color Scheme Shotwell. You get Firefox, Ghost IRC, HexChat, Pidgin, Thunderbird Transmission. Office, you get Itril, and you get LibreOffice Suite. And Mate Dictionary. Mate Dictionary. You get Exhale, Gnome, Pulse Audio, and XF Burn in that. And Kaja, Deconf, Editor, and interesting, GhostBSD Bugs is a new one. I've not noticed that before. And System Monitor, which we'll have a look now. Because I'm just using the bare minimum for this demonstration. And as usual, it's always best to check top rather than go with the, I think so, 669, 670 megabytes being used or in RAM. Whereas, this one's reporting 1 gigabyte. Because it does slightly get confused with the memory usage of FreeBSD based systems. Right, so you got them. So it's the basic desktop. Your different workspaces. Network. Audio. And the date. And there's your home folder, places, etc. And your preferences, internet, network, look and feel, and personal. Administration, control center, about, log out, and shut down. The software station and the update station are more or less carried over from last time. And that's it, really. That's the default look of the desktop. Oh, not quite, yeah. Before I forget, just for those who may be interested, the selection of backgrounds, for those who might be interested in these things, it's a bit slow. The themes are pretty basic. You get Vmix, or Vimix, and the backgrounds are more or less the same as they were last time in like 1 or 2 editions, but that's it really. Fonts, that's not selected by default, we'll put that on for LCDs. And that's it. Here are some of the changes since GhostBSD 18.12. Slim has been replaced by LightDM. They've updated the system to FreeBSD 13 current. They've added the support of ZFS with MBR master boot record on the installer. They've removed GKSU, and they fixed the Unicode decode error ASCII problem with the software station. In addition, they've added a GhostBSD boot mute, they've added refined setup on the installer, they've fixed the default mate terminal setting, they've removed the TrueOS setting to default ZFS, which improved the installation of UFS. And the notable bug fixes since 1812 was a custom partitioning fail that's been fixed, is that the installer wasn't booting, VirtualBox bridge and NAT failure. Bug 75 is that you cannot boot from the USB drive. There was no volume control for sound, and the control sound preferences didn't stick. Bug 79, USB free support. And bug 103 was a station tweak, user interface wasn't working with the code. Now we're just going to install it. If you click on the install GhostBSD icon on the desktop in your live session, it'll take you to the, obviously, welcome to GhostBSD. Select your language that you require. In this case, English. English UK if we can find it. For your keyboard settings. Alright, there. Time zone is Europe, and then go down to London. In this case, I'm going to select UFS and select the hard drive. I'm doing this in VirtualBox to show you the installation process, but it's more or less exactly the same in the real hardware. I'm going to select password. And input name. I'm going to say I did all this on the main machine, exactly the same steps. It's just that, you know, I could have filmed it in a shaky cam, but in this instance, you know, it's a lot easier. Change that to shell. And that's about it so far. Installation really is super easy. But nevertheless, what I'll do is I will skip this part and we'll go on to the desktop. Right, we're on the desktop of GhostBSD 19.04, and I've been using this now for about 3 days straight to get a good review, and it's running on real hardware on my main machine via a hotswap hard drive. Many of the quirks and bugs from previous releases have been sorted out in this one. It's very, very polished, as you'd expect from GhostBSD. Now, there are one or two, I would say, new quirks put into it, but I'll show you them in a bit. But in general, a very competent operating system. On the desktop front, it picked up the hard drives from my normal FreeBSD install, included them there. So I can access the files on that, which is not a problem at all, which is brilliant, without having to manually edit the FS tab to get these done. I set up the network file server, so I can access, it's really an FS mount point within GhostBSD, so I can access the file server that I have, which is good. So I can record off this desktop, save it, put it into the network file server, and then edit in the main FreeBSD machine. Well, you might be asking, why don't I do the editing in this GhostBSD? Well, because I only used a relatively small hard drive for this, and so I didn't want to run out of space. So yeah, I'll show you the software station. And then go to it. There we go. The software station. Let's put in my password. It's using Asterisk, which I'm never too keen on. The software station, it's a little bit slow to populate, but it gets there in the end. Now, it is an improvement on OctoPKG. in previous releases. But then again, it's not an improvement, and there are one or two things which I think really could be improved. One of them is if I don't roll the mouse cursor over the actual packages, you don't know what they are. I mean, what is F-Lite? We know it's a speech server, but you wouldn't know by looking at it. And if I scroll down, there are obviously some names which you know, but there's a lot that you don't. And I think some kind of description next to it or underneath it by default would be a lot better. But, you know, it's just a little thing. Just a little things which irritate me. But apart from that, it's quite a slick package manager. It's just the descriptions of the packages which really need to be included. But by the by, it says that there's 32,639 packages available, which is not too bad. Not bad at all. So there's that. The software station to install anything is really easy, as you would expect. Let's have a look, for instance. Let's pick something small. Incongruous. Oh, I don't know. What is that? Okay. Cow cursor, for instance. Well, we'll click on that. So you just click on it and select apply. The one thing, there's another thing which irritates me, I actually just remembered now, is the notification that it's actually doing something is woefully small. You know, some kind of larger visual feedback would be great to know that you've actually started to install and it's being installed. I'll show you what I mean. On this if I install Calcurs, I'll click apply to install, and that's it. And if you notice at the bottom there's a small line going across. Well, that's the only notification you're going to get. And that's it. And then it disappears. So you're left, really, that doesn't change. You're left with no indication that it's installed, which to me is not good. So lack of description and lack of notification really are the two things that stand out for me. Only when I move on to something else you realise that that little box there is dark to indicate it's been installed, but the nowhere tells you that that's what it means. So that's not good. That could be improved. Right, okay, we'll have a look at something else. I've noticed with the control center, unless you're using the default theme, the display in the control center really does get messed up. Let's have a look. Okay, this is what it looks like nicely. And we'll change themes. Right, okay. So you got a few selection of themes, nothing fantastic. The default one is based upon Vimix or Vimix. So if I switch between these two, it becomes dark and light, of course. But there's no overall change of that functionality. But if I click on, I don't know, let's say for Mentor, as you can see, the control panel is pretty messed up. And a few icons on the desktop get messed up. Oops. Bring that over. So I'm working on a dual display, and I keep one display just open for monitoring things. So yeah, that's pretty messed up. And so if I'll change it to high contrast. Again, it doesn't improve it. Traditional green, yeah, all of these ones. Only when I go back to the Vimix does it come back to normal. So maybe that's something that needs to be looked at there. I don't know. It could be to do with fonts. I've increased the font size to 12. Just purely because it shows up better in the recording. So that's not too good then. That needs to be seen too. Going back to the control center, there was no problem at all with the NVIDIA drivers being installed. As you can see, we're at version 390.87, which is not the latest one, but it's on par really with what's default by FreeBSD. Although you can go to the NVIDIA website and download, I think, is it 418? I can't remember. More latest drivers, but you have to install them manually. I did it on my main FreeBSD install, but it's not something to be done if you fear of delving into the systems, as it were. So that works quite well. That's good. Installed. Right. Update station is, as it suggests, no updates available. The system's up to date. That obviously notifies you via notification at the top of the screen if there are any updates available. Print settings. Let's have a look. This should find. Right. See, there are no printers. It says there's no printers configured yet. But if I go into, let's go into LibreOffice. Well, that was really quick. Let's have a look at the version before we get going. 6.0.7.3.0. This is not the latest version, but it's new enough. It was type some random characters and then print. Right. So it's picked up my network printer, which is being hosted on a Ubuntu server box in the office, which I keep on all the time. I mean, that just enables me to do some printing from various different machines rather than having to either cart the machine, the printer around to every machine, plug it in, or have every machine have a dedicated printer. With this one, I can just have it, this little laser printer in the corner, and every machine can send to it. And so it works quite well. So that's good. Don't save that. Station tweak. That's interesting. Let's have a look at this. These are pretty much all more or less what they were before in what I've covered before in previous releases. Just lets you tweak one or two different aspects of the desktop. That's if you want compositing, software compositing, that is. So not too bad. Right, I mean, I've been using this now for about 3 days as my sole, and it gets you can get a good feel of it, a good feel of how the system is. And I must say, I mean, I'm running this on a just an old spinning hard drive, and it's very responsive. I've noticed everything is really quick. I've had no major hang-ups. The sound works out of the box as it should. OBS works fine. I'll show you the webcam in a minute. There's the webcam on OBS. So that runs out without any tweaking. Oh, by the way, you're looking at a new, I don't know, what do you call it now? It's a Behringer XLR microphone interface. You plug the XLR microphone into the large round socket there on the left hand side. That little flashing light tells you when so I need to adjust the sound on it. But yeah, it enables you to use a nice quality microphone, and it plugs into the USB on the computer, so you can get a really good sound quality. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's just the webcam nice and working, so that's not a problem. I'll just close that off. And what we'll do is, if I can find one, I bet I can't find one. Okay, yeah, here he is. All very professional. I've got a USB stick. I'm going to plug a USB stick into the front of the machine, if I can find, that's it, into the front of the machine, and see what pops up. Hopefully it works. There we go, look. So it selected it. So for mounting USB sticks, it works without a problem. For webcam, it works without a problem. For detecting my network printer, it works without a problem. So them 3 things are bugbears which sometimes annoys me on FreeBSD. But once you've got it set up on FreeBSD, then it works anyway. But out of the box, obviously, it doesn't. With GhostBSD, because it's setting itself up as a user-friendly version of FreeBSD, it should get these things right, and it does. They've actually managed to nail it quite well. I'll pull the USB stick out, and the window doesn't disappear, but that's fine. That's okay. Not bad. Very good. So yeah, let's have a look. I'll give you a quick tour of the applications. I mean, they're more or less basically the same as they were in the default live session. Obviously, with one or two ones that I've added. The ones that I've added, I've included onto the... Except for that one, that should be over there. All these things here are what I added later. One or two games, of course. Got to have a few games. But yeah, I mean, the menu is fast, it's slick, everything is... There's no delay, no screen tearing. It's very good. Everything that you want. I'll look at the monitor if you want to have a look at the monitor. I'll just drag it across, of course. Oh. The mouse is a bit keen on GhostBSD, which I've noticed. The travel. Right, okay, so that's that. Okay. Ooh, get a bit full. Right, so system. It's telling you it's on the latest kernel. It's on 13 current, and using 1.2 or 0.3 mate. And there's a system lock. Processors and resources. Like I said before, if it tells you you're using 1.9 gigabytes, that's not exactly true. It's just the way that the mate is configured for Linux, and it doesn't really report on the memory as it should be. So yeah, very nice, and it's not using much of the CPU either. Very good. Everything basically is the same as it was for that. Administration, print settings, that's it. So, would I recommend GhostBSD? I mean, if you'd asked me that question, I don't know, a few months back or maybe a year or two back, I would have said no, because it would give you a false representation of what FreeBSD was. You know, they were advocating that is the friendly version, and it did achieve that to a certain extent, but there were many parts which were lacking. But now I would say yes, definitely. Anyone coming to FreeBSD from Linux or Windows, I mean, you're more likely to come from Linux than Windows. And if they want a taste of FreeBSD without actually getting your hands dirty, gradually ease yourself into that, as it were, then yes, brilliant. It'll give you a desktop experience which you probably are more familiar with from Ubuntu, etc., or Linux Mint. There are one or two caveats with that. It's not Linux. It's not going to have the same amount of software available. You're not going to play the latest games via Proton and stuff like that. But it will achieve many of these things. It will achieve many of the other things that you want. And besides, under the hood as well, it's FreeBSD. Or basically, TrueOS, but FreeBSD underneath. So yeah, I would recommend it. It's taken them a while. They're ironing out the problems, but I think they're getting there. And for me to say that, I mean, I've never really been a fan of GhostBSD, but I must say that this particular version and distribution of it, for want of a better word, is very polished and shows great promise for the future. I would highly recommend it. I would prefer if you went for the vanilla FreeBSD, but if you must go for one that's relatively user-friendly, you're not spoiled for choice these days. You've got this one, GhostBSD, and you've got Trident, And for ultra portability, you've got Nomad. Each one of them is set up to be user friendly, and they all achieve it. They're all after different niches, but they all achieve the user friendliness. Absolutely brilliant. We live in great times at the moment for BSD. Anyway, this is just a quick look at the desktop and an overview of the system that I've been using for the last 3 days. As is customary now for any new install of a BSD based operating system, I like to run Linus, which is a security auditing program. Not version 2. Okay, that's not too bad. That's more or less the latest version. One version less, I think. Right, yeah, so it basically just audits everything in a system and recommends improvements and stuff like that. And I tend to get not bad results. Hardening index, 55, yeah. So Linus gives GhostBSD out of the box an index of 55, which is okay. It's not the highest I've had it. I think the highest obviously is going to be OpenBSD with hardened BSD. Pretty close. But yeah, not too bad. I think that's on par with FreeBSD. Next, we're going to look at some top. It's always good to get a measure of resources being used in the system. At the moment, I'm using 956 megabytes of memory. And the system, I know it's the simple screen recorder and CMonkey, but I had roughly, it must have been about 12 tabs open on this. But yeah, it's not too bad. I opened a text document in Pluma, and yeah, not too bad at all. This next section really is for those who care about statistics and memory usage and all the other stuff. I like to include it because I like to see that in reviews myself. I don't get a lot of chance to see reviews with this in it, so I like to put it in my own reviews. If this is boring, then you can fast forward or skip to the end. If not, then just hang around and look at all the pretty numbers. All very good. Now we're just going to put a different switch on it, and it just gives it constant updating rather than just a one-off snapshot. It's all good so far. Next up, we'll put IO stat with the W3 switch. Again, like the VM stat 3, it just gives you a constant updating of resources being used. Transfer totals and hard drives and all the rest of that lovely goodliness. It's not a major strain on the system. I mean, if you had multiple users coming in on at the same time, then this would be perhaps more beneficial for you. I just want to give you as wide as possible look at the system resources being used and activity while running GhostBSD. Right, next up we'll look at systat with the IO stat switch. It's fairly empty at the moment, not much going on. If I move the mouse around, you can see just a little bit of activity. Also the fact that you got simple screen recorder going. Again, you know, GhostBSD doesn't tax your system at any stretch of the imagination. Like all good BSDs, actually. They are pretty good on system resource usage. Right, very good. Next up is GStat. That gives you an overview, really, of all your drives and storage media. I'll say there's not much going on. Just the simple screen recorder writing to disk. My internet speed is quite fast. I get roughly about 200 megabits per second with about 30 megabits upload. That's what I pay for anyway. If it's a little bit above that, then that's all good. There you go. Look, it's 204 and then 32. And downloading initially the ISO from GhostBSD, I got a reasonable speed of 16 megabits per second. But I'll try again. But while in GhostBSD, when I tried to download, it might have been just unlucky. Looking at the speed of 700 and roughly like, it's not even 1 megabit per second. So yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. It's kind of weird. It might be. I mean, this is a good few days after it's been released, so I don't think people are hammering the server for copies of it. And this was from both the French and I think it was Canadian, I'm not sure, server. So yeah, it's very strange. I mean, just a one-off. But this is slow download speeds is something which I've encountered before from GhostBSD. I mean, it's surprising considering how fast the initial download in the ISO was. But I might be just unlucky.